Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to constantly search for who you are supposed to be? There is a strange kind of fatigue that comes not from physical labor, but from the endless pursuit of meaning. We spend our lives running toward the next achievement, the next relationship, the next version of ourselves, hoping that when we finally arrive, we will feel complete. But what happens when you are simply tired? What happens when the search itself becomes a burden, and the very things you thought would give you purpose suddenly feel heavy, hollow, or fragile? If you have ever felt emotionally exhausted, anxious about your future, or completely lost when a chapter of your life unexpectedly closed, this is for you. We live in a world that demands we define ourselves. From a young age, we are asked what we want to be, not who we want to be. We are taught to attach our value to our output, our titles, our relationships, and our responsibilities. We become the dedicated worker, the reliable provider, the successful entrepreneur, the perfect partner, or the one who always holds everything together. We pour our entirely into these roles. But here is the hidden truth that causes so much of our suffering. When you anchor your identity to things that can disappear overnight, your peace will always be at the mercy of the wind. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that a profound source of human suffering is attachment, specifically our attachment to an illusion of permanence. We cling tightly to the roles we play, believing that these temporary masks are our true face. But everything in the physical world is subject to change. Companies downsize, relationships evolve or end, health fluctuates, the economy shifts. If your entire sense of meaning is wrapped up in a role that can be taken from you by a single phone call, an unexpected email, or a twist of fate, you will live in a constant, quiet state of fear. Imagine building a magnificent sandcastle right at the edge of the ocean. You spend hours perfecting the towers, smoothing the walls, and defending it from the wind. You become so attached to this castle that you begin to believe it is your actual home. But the tide is a law of nature. It will rise. And when the water inevitably washes the sand away, you are left devastated. Not because the ocean was cruel, but because you forgot the nature of the sand. Think about your own life. How many castles are you currently defending? How much of your daily anxiety comes from trying to hold together an identity built on shifting ground? We lose sleep over a job title. We panic when we feel we are falling behind in life. We feel entirely lost when we retire, when children leave home, or when a business fails. We think we have lost ourselves, but in reality, we have only lost a role. Ask yourself this: if everything you currently do was stripped away tomorrow, if you could no longer use your job title, your social status, or your usual responsibilities to introduce yourself, who would be left? What is the quiet presence underneath all that doing? Pause. Breathe. Let that question settle in your mind without trying to force an answer. Observe the discomfort it might bring, but do not run from it. You do not have to figure it all out today. You simply need to realize that you are not the heavy armor you have been wearing. You are allowed to be tired of the search, because true meaning is not something you have to hunt down and capture. It is not an exhausting destination. It is something you make space for when you stop gripping so tightly to who you think you need to be. But untangling yourself from the things you have built your life around is not easy. It requires us to look closely at the fragile labels we wear. And this is where the next truth begins. 2. The illusion of titles and roles. What if the names you call yourself are the very things keeping you trapped? Here is a truth few people want to face. We spend so much time building a resume for the world that we forget to build a home for our own soul. We confuse what we do with who we are. We introduce ourselves with our job titles, our marital status, our wealth, or our achievements. We say, I am a manager, I am a parent, I am an artist. We attach our pride to being the most reliable person in the room. the one who fixes everything, the one who never rests. We pour our entirely into maintaining these images, and when someone criticizes our work, ignores our efforts, or replaces us, we feel a deep, crushing blow to our very existence. We feel invisible. We feel as though we have ceased to matter, simply because a title was removed. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering arises when we mistake the temporary for the permanent. In Buddhist thought, there is an understanding of non-self. This does not mean you do not exist. It means there is no fixed, unchanging identity hidden beneath your skin. You are not a static object. You are a fluid, ever-changing process. When we attach a permanent label to a flowing river, we create our own misery. Buddhism reminds us that roles are merely convenient tools for navigating the physical world, not the ultimate truth of our being. Imagine a beautifully grand stage play. An actor steps onto the stage wearing a magnificent costume. They play the role of a powerful leader, a loyal servant, or a wise healer. For a few hours, the audience believes they are this character. The actor, too, feels the emotions of the role deeply. But when the curtain falls and the lights dim, the actor takes off the costume. They wash their face, walk out the back door, and breathe the cool night air, returning to themselves. Suffering begins only when the actor refuses to take off the costume, believing they are still the king, even when the theater is completely empty. In modern life, we are all actors who have forgotten we are wearing costumes. We wear the costume of the perfect employee, working late into the night, sacrificing our peace for a promotion or a manager's approval. We wear the costume of the strong one in the family, never asking for help. But the pressure to succeed in these roles is crushing. When a company downsizes, when a relationship ends, or when we simply age out of a certain phase of life, the stage goes dark. The play is over. And if we have forgotten how to take off the costume, we are left standing in the dark, terrified, feeling as if our entire existence has been erased. We rush to find a new costume just to feel real again. Think about your own life. Which costume has become too tight? What role are you playing so intensely that you have forgotten the quiet, breathing person underneath? What title are you terrified of losing? Pause. Breathe. Feel the stillness in your own body. Remind yourself, I am the awareness behind the role. I am the sky, not the clouds passing through it. You can do your job with excellence, and you can love your family with all your heart. Without confusing these actions with your eternal identity, you can participate in life without being consumed by it. You do not need to be a title to be worthy of peace. You do not need a label to have meaning. But shedding these labels brings its own kind of challenge. Because when you first let go of who you thought you were, the sudden emptiness can feel incredibly heavy. And this is where the next truth begins. 3. The weight of a fragile identity. What if the very things you rely on to make you feel strong are actually making you deeply fragile? Here is the truth that few people want to face. The tighter you hold on to an identity built by the outside world, the more you will suffer trying to protect it. We build our entire sense of self-worth on things that are entirely out of our control. We rely on the praise of a manager, the success of a project, the stability of an economy, or the constant validation of those around us. When things are going well, we feel invincible. We feel purposeful. But this kind of identity is incredibly heavy. It requires constant maintenance. You have to keep proving you are smart, capable, and worthy. The moment the praise stops or the success fades, we crash. We live in a quiet, underlying anxiety because deep down, we know how fragile this arrangement is. We are constantly exhausted because defending a fragile identity takes all of our energy. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering is inevitable when we try to find permanent security in an impermanent world. In Buddhist thought, a core lesson is understanding the nature of conditioned reality. This means that everything around us depends on conditions that are always shifting. If your peace depends on the condition that your career always goes up, or that people always agree with you, you will always be a prisoner to fear. Real peace comes not from securing these conditions, but from detaching your worth from them. Imagine a beautiful, intricate glass vase placed on a very tall, narrow pedestal. It represents your constructed identity. You spend all your time guarding the vase, terrified the wind will blow or someone will accidentally bump the table. Your entire life becomes about protecting this fragile object from shattering. You cannot relax, you cannot leave the room. But true strength is not the glass vase. True strength is the open, solid earth beneath it, which cannot shatter no matter what falls upon it. Think about how this plays out in modern life. We build a glass vase out of our professional reputation, our financial milestones, or our carefully curated image. We are terrified of failure, of aging, of being judged, or of being ignored. When a sudden shift happens, a job loss, a sudden illness, a public mistake, it feels like the vase falling. We feel utterly destroyed. But the deepest pain is not the event itself. It is the shattering of the fragile identity we placed inside the vase. The exhaustion you feel is simply the toll of guarding a glass identity for too long. Ask yourself, what glass vase are you guarding so fiercely right now? What are you terrified will happen if people see you without your achievements or your perfectly maintained image? Pause, breathe. Notice the tension in your body, the tightness from always trying to protect your status. Observe the thought without following it. Imagine stepping back from the pedestal. You do not have to hold it together anymore. You can let the fragile things break without breaking yourself. You are not the glass. You are the ground beneath it. But when the glass finally shatters and you stop trying to hold the pieces, you are left with nothing in your hands. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The wisdom of empty hands. What if the emptiness you are running from is exactly what you need to heal? Here is the truth few are willing to embrace. We are absolutely terrified of having nothing to do and nowhere to be. When a significant role ends, when the busy season suddenly stops, or when a chapter fades into the past, we are left standing with empty hands. Our immediate reaction is panic. We feel an overwhelming urge to reach for a new distraction, a new goal, or a new problem to solve. We have convinced ourselves that if our hands are empty, our lives must be meaningless. We associate stillness with failure. We associate quietness with being left behind or forgotten. The thought of just sitting with ourselves feels unbearable, so we scramble to fill the void with anything we can find. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look at emptiness not as a dark void, but as boundless potential. In Buddhist thought, a calm mind is like an empty bowl. It is useful precisely because there is nothing in it. If your bowl is already full of stale water, nothing fresh can be poured in. When your hands are empty, you are finally free from carrying the heavy burdens of the past. Buddhism reminds us that letting go is not a loss. It is a profound creation of space. It is the necessary condition for peace. Imagine a traveler walking a long dusty road, tightly clenching a heavy stone in each hand. The stones represent their achievements, their struggles, their titles, and their pride. Their knuckles are white, their arms ache with every step. For years, they refuse to let go, terrified that without the weight of the stones, they will have no purpose on the journey. But one day, the sheer exhaustion wins. The hands open, and the heavy stones drop to the earth. At first, the hands feel strangely, painfully light. The fingers tremble from the unfamiliar emptiness. But slowly, the traveler realizes their hands are finally free to feel the morning breeze, to touch a cool river, or to hold a warm light. In our modern lives, we clench the heavy stones of career expectations, relationship pressures, and the relentless drive to prove our worth. We hold fiercely onto the pain of being criticized, the fear of failing, and the anxiety of what comes next. When an unexpected change forces those stones out of our hands, when a job is lost, when the house is finally empty, or when a long effort comes to an end, we panic. We stare at a blank calendar or a quiet room and feel a crushing sense of dread. We rush to fill the silence with endless scrolling, immediate new tasks, or loud noise. We are terrified of the sudden lightness. Think about your own life. What are you desperately reaching for right now just to avoid feeling empty? Are you filling your time with noise because you are afraid of what the silence might ask of you? What would happen if you simply let your hands remain open for a little while? Pause, breathe, physically unclench your hands right now, wherever you are. Let your palms rest open in your lap. Observe the feeling of having nothing to hold, nothing to grip, nothing to control. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You are not useless because you are resting. You are not empty because you have stopped striving. You are simply making room. But sitting with open hands forces us to step out of the constant motion and confront the quiet moments in between. And this is where the next truth begins. 5. The space between the doing. What if your true life is happening entirely in the moments when you are doing absolutely nothing? Here is a truth we spend our entire lives trying to outrun. We have convinced ourselves that our worth is measured entirely by our motion. We evaluate a good day by how much we crossed off a list. We feel a quiet, nagging guilt the moment we sit down to rest. If we are not producing, fixing, organizing, or planning, we feel as though we are wasting our existence. We believe that meaning is a destination we have to hustle toward, and that pausing will cause us to fall hopelessly behind. So we fill every spare second. We look at screens while waiting in line. We listen to noise to drown out the silence of a quiet room. We bring the stress of work to the dinner table. We are exhausted, yet terrified to stop, because we confuse doing with existing. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that peace is not found in the completion of a task, but in the stillness that surrounds it. In Buddhist thought, the mind is naturally clear, like a vast blue sky. Thoughts, actions, and worries are merely clouds passing through. When we are obsessed with doing, we are desperately trying to arrange the clouds, build structures out of the clouds, and chase the clouds across the horizon. We become exhausted trying to manage the weather. Buddhism reminds us that the sky itself does not need to do anything to be whole. The space between the clouds is where true clarity lives. Imagine a single seed buried deep in the dark, cold earth during winter. To the outside observer, nothing is happening. The seed is not producing leaves. It is not reaching for the sun. It is entirely still, surrounded by quiet darkness. But the seed is not failing. It is not useless. This period of deep, silent resting is the exact process that allows the roots to form. Without the stillness of the winter, the seed would never have the strength to push through the heavy soil in the spring. In our modern lives, we refuse to accept our own winters. We demand endless spring, endless blooming, and endless output from ourselves. We feel the heavy pressure to succeed every single day. When a relationship ends, when a career stalls, or when we simply feel drained from years of striving, we are entering a natural winter. But instead of resting, we force ourselves to keep blooming. We panic. We compare ourselves to others who are in their season of rapid growth, and we feel a crushing sense of inadequacy. We refuse to accept the space between the doing. Think about your own life. How hard are you fighting against your own need to rest? What are you afraid will happen if you stop trying to manage every outcome? Are you running from the silence because you are afraid of the truths that might finally speak up when the noise stops? Pause, breathe, drop your shoulders. Give yourself permission to be entirely useless for just one moment. Stop trying to force the door open. Let the stillness sit beside you without trying to fill it with a plan, a memory, or a worry. You do not need to earn your right to exist. You do not have to prove your value through exhaustion. The space between the doing is not a void to be feared. It is the very ground where you finally meet yourself. But to truly rest in that space, you must stop fighting the natural shifts in your own life. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. Embracing the river of change. What if the exhaustion you feel is simply the result of fighting a current that was never meant to be stopped? Here is a truth that causes some of our deepest suffering. We demand permanence in a world made entirely of movement. We spend our energy trying to freeze time. We want our careers to remain perfectly stable, our relationships to never shift, and our identities to stay exactly as they were when we felt the most secure. When change happens, whether it is a gradual fading or a sudden shock, we treat it as a tragedy. We fight the transition. We desperately try to put the pieces back exactly how they used to be, clinging to old habits, old titles, and old expectations. And when we realize we cannot stop the change, we become profoundly exhausted. We are tired because resisting reality takes all of our strength. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that everything is governed by impermanence. In Buddhist thought, suffering does not come from the fact that things change. It comes from our relentless refusal to accept it. We cling to the edge of the riverbank, terrified of where the water might take us. But impermanence is not a punishment. It is the very nature of existence. A flower must drop its petals for the fruit to grow. Buddhism reminds us that when we stop fighting the nature of change, the energy we spent resisting can finally be used for living. Imagine a person standing in the middle of a powerful, fast-moving river, terrified of where the water might take them. They wrap their arms tightly around a large, jagged rock. The current crashes against them, pulling at their legs, bruising their body. Their muscles ache in agony. Their grip is failing. They believe that letting go means drowning. But eventually, the sheer exhaustion takes over and their hands slip from the stone. Instead of pulling them under, the deep water lifts them. They realize that if they simply lean back and stop fighting, the river will carry them gently downstream. The danger was never the river. The danger was the desperate need to stay in one place. In our modern lives, we cling to jagged rocks. We cling to a job title that is slowly disappearing, or a role that is no longer needed, because we are afraid of the unknown. We cling to a version of ourselves from 5 years ago, feeling lost because we no longer match that image. We resist the changing seasons of our lives, the transition out of a busy career, the shifting dynamics of our family, or the quietness of aging. We fight the natural current, thinking we are keeping ourselves safe, when in reality, we are just drowning in our own resistance. Think about your own life. What jagged rock are you holding on to right now? What chapter has clearly ended, but you are still trying to read the same page over and over again? What are you so afraid will happen if you finally let the current take you? Pause. Breathe. Imagine the physical sensation of uncurling your fingers from the rock. Observe the thought of uncertainty without letting it control you. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to hold everything in place forever. You are allowed to let an old identity wash away. You can step into a new phase of life without having a new title ready, because peace is not found by stopping the river. It is found by learning how to float. But to float, you must stop frantically searching for a new shore to conquer. And this is where the next truth begins. 7. The quiet shift from seeking to being. What if the meaning you have been searching for so desperately is hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to simply stop looking? Here is a truth that is hard to accept. We confuse seeking meaning with creating it. We are exhausted because we treat our lives as an endless scavenger hunt. We are convinced that purpose is a rare, hidden object waiting at the top of a corporate ladder, at the end of a flawless relationship, or inside a specific bank balance. We consume the books, we hustle, we ask the experts, hoping someone will hand us the map to our own significance. And when we do not find it, or worse, when we reach the goal and still feel empty, we collapse. We are tired of the constant striving. We are exhausted by the quiet, nagging feeling that we are always just one achievement away from finally feeling complete. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that the very act of frantic seeking is often what blocks us from finding peace. In Buddhist thought, the mind of the seeker is forever trapped in the future. It operates on the painful belief that I am lacking now, but I will be whole later. But true peace and true meaning only exist in the present moment. Buddhism reminds us that awakening is not acquiring something new. It is realizing what is already there when the striving finally stops. Imagine a person frantically running through a thick, dark forest with a tiny, flickering lantern, searching everywhere for the sun. They look under heavy stones, they climb the tallest trees, they exhaust their muscles running from shadow to shadow, shouting into the dark. They are so consumed by the panic of the search that they do not realize they only need to sit down, rest, and wait for the dawn. The sun cannot be captured by running. It can only be felt when you stand still and let the morning arrive. In our modern lives, we sprint through the forest of ambition, comparison, and societal expectations. We search for our identity in a new job title, a new project, or a new phase of life, hoping the next change will finally bring the warmth of meaning. When a role disappears overnight, when our tiny lantern goes out, we panic in the dark. We feel a desperate urge to immediately start running again, terrified of being left behind. We do not realize that the heavy exhaustion we feel is the exact signal that it is time to stop running. Think about that. Ask yourself, how much of your energy is spent waiting for the next big thing to finally make you feel secure? What would happen if you simply declared that the search is over? What if you decided that you do not need to find another role, another title, or another distraction to be worthy of your own life? Pause. Breathe. Let that sink in. Feel the solid ground beneath you. Let go of the need to have everything figured out today. Let the uncomfortable feeling of not knowing wash over you without rushing to solve it. Just be here, without a label, without a task. You do not need to chase what is already arriving. Meaning is not a trophy you win. It is the quiet presence you bring to whatever you are doing right now, even if you are doing nothing. But to truly rest in that presence, you must first discover what remains when the world's expectations are stripped away. And this is where the next truth begins. 8. Discovering your unshakable core. What if the person you have been exhausting yourself trying to become is actually the person you already are when you stop trying? Here is a truth that changes everything. We build our identity like a fragile house of cards, terrified of every breeze, when in reality, we are the unbreakable table underneath. We spend decades adding layers to ourselves. We collect achievements, skills, and titles, stacking them up to build what we think is a solid identity. We define ourselves by our productivity, our bank accounts, and our ability to solve problems for others. But when a layer is suddenly stripped away, when a career unexpectedly ends, when a long-term relationship fades, or when our physical energy shifts, we feel like we are disappearing. We panic. We mistake the loss of a temporary layer for the loss of our actual core. We feel hollow, believing that if we are not actively being useful to the world, we are absolutely nothing. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that our true nature is not something that can be manufactured, added to, or subtracted from. In Buddhist thought, there is a profound understanding that beneath all the conditioned layers, beneath the fear, the ego, the titles, and the social masks, there is a pure, indestructible awareness. It cannot be fired from a job. It cannot age out of relevance. It cannot be diminished by someone else's judgment. Buddhism reminds us that awakening is not about building a better version of yourself. It is simply remembering this unshakable core that has been there all along. Imagine a magnificent, ancient mirror that has been covered in years of thick dust, layers of heavy paint, and thick fabric. Over time, everyone forgot it was even a mirror. They admired the intricate fabric, or they criticized the color of the paint. When a fierce storm eventually comes and tears the fabric away, and the heavy rain washes the paint off, observers might panic. They might say the beautiful object has been destroyed, but the mirror itself is completely untouched. It does not grieve when the paint is removed. The stripping away of the external layers is precisely what allows it to finally reflect the open sky. In our modern lives, we are covered in the paint of professional expectations and the heavy fabric of social roles. We wrap ourselves in the desperate need to be seen as successful, unbothered, or relentlessly strong. When a sudden life-changer layoff, a retirement, or a quiet realization of deep exhaustion rips those layers away, we feel naked. We feel terrified of being seen without our accomplishments. We feel as though we have been ruined. But what feels like a devastating loss of identity is actually a profound unveiling. The loss of a temporary role cannot scratch the surface of your true self. The storm is only washing away what was never really you. Ask yourself, what layer is currently being washed away in your own life? What title or expectation is fading? Instead of mourning the loss of the paint, what if you allowed yourself to finally see the mirror underneath? Can you trust that who you are without your achievements is already entirely enough? Pause. Breathe. Sit with the feeling of having nothing to prove to anyone. Just for this moment, let go of the exhausting need to defend your image. Observe the quiet, steady awareness inside you that requires absolutely no maintenance and no validation. You do not have to rebuild the house of cards. You do not have to replace the heavy fabric. You are already the solid ground. But touching this unshakable core requires one final, courageous act of surrender. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. Returning to the peace of your true self. We began this journey talking about a very specific, quiet kind of exhaustion. The deep, heavy fatigue that comes from trying to constantly be someone. You have spent years of your life searching for meaning in titles, in endless output, and in roles that can be taken away from you in a single afternoon. You have carried this weight for a very long time, believing that if you just held on a little tighter, worked a little harder, or found the perfect identity, you would finally feel secure. But as we have seen, the harder you try to secure an impermanent world, the more exhausted you become. You have spent decades trying to prove your worth to a society that will eventually forget your accomplishments. You have sacrificed your inner stillness for achievements that can vanish with a single phone call, an economic shift, or the natural passing of time. But you are tired now, and that tiredness is not a weakness. It is not a failure. It is a profound, necessary signal from your own spirit telling you that it is finally time to put down the heavy stones. You have seen that the roles you play, the dedicated employee, the reliable provider, the relentless achiever, are just costumes. They are beautiful, necessary costumes for navigating the physical world, but they are not your actual self. You have seen that sitting with empty hands is not a terrifying void. It is the freedom to finally touch the present moment. You have realized that the fast-moving river of change is not something to fight, but something to float upon. And most importantly, you have discovered that beneath the fragile glass vases and the heavy layers of external paint, there is an unshakable core within you that requires absolutely no effort to maintain. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to abandon your life, your responsibilities, or the people you deeply love. It simply asks you to hold them lightly. It teaches us that true presence is only possible when we stop trying to control the outcome. Letting go is not about losing yourself. It is about dropping the exhausting illusion that you need to be a fixed, unchanging object to have value. Non-attachment is not apathy. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. It is the quiet declaration that your peace will no longer be held hostage by things that can disappear overnight. Meaning is not found in the tight grip of control. It is found in the open palm of acceptance. Think back to the sand castle at the edge of the ocean. When the tide inevitably comes and washes the tall walls away, you do not have to cry for the sand. You can simply stand on the open beach, feel the solid earth beneath your feet, and watch the vast, beautiful water. The castle was temporary, but the beach remains. The role was temporary, but you remain. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and deciding that your only real job for the day is to simply exist. Imagine walking into a room and not needing anyone to recognize your status. Imagine the sheer, magnificent freedom of knowing that if every title was stripped away from you today, your deepest, truest self would remain completely untouched. You would still be able to feel the warmth of the sun. You would still be able to offer quiet kindness. You would still be entirely complete. Ask yourself one last time, what if you just stopped searching today? What if you decided that you have already arrived? The meaning you have been desperately looking for is not hiding in the next decade of your life, waiting for you to earn it. It is breathing in your chest right now. It is in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. It is in your willingness to just be, without a title, without a task, and without an audience. Pause. Breathe. Let your shoulders completely drop. Give yourself the profound grace of ordinary existence. You do not have to be spectacular. You do not have to be relentless. You just have to be here. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.